Aharon Rabinowitz here for Red Giant Software. In this mini tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can use audio to drive your animation and effects with Red Giant Software's Holomatrix, a tool for creating the look of holographic imagery and bad video reception. I'll also be using Trapcode Soundkeys, which is a really cool tool for selectively isolating audio bands for just this kind of thing. So, here I am in After Effects with a video clip from Digital Juice's Video Tracks HD stock footage, which you can find at digitaljuice.com. Now, I'm going to be adding Holomatrix to this footage, but the way to do this is not to go to the Effects menu where most of your effects are going to be listed. Instead, what you do is you choose Window, and you go down to the bottom, and you choose Holomatrix. This will bring up a little palette here where we can apply Holomatrix. Now, by default, the settings are for something that's geared more towards a hologram. So I'll choose from the presets, I'll go down to TV Really Bad. Why don't we do that one? And I'll choose Apply Holomatrix. As you can see, we instantly have the effect of bad TV reception. And let's do a quick RAM preview to see that in action. Now, as you can see, things are looking pretty bad. But right now it's kind of happening at random, and also some of the effects that I'd like to see in there aren't showing up right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to use audio to drive this animation. Now, I do have this audio in here called Gym Music. It's not the best music ever made. I just sort of put it together from a bunch of loops, and just so you can hear it, anyway, the point is that there's a nice snare drum in there, and I'd like to use that snare, that bang, to activate these effects. So what I'll do is I will go into the Holomatrix interface. So let me select my layer that has Holomatrix. I'll hit E to reveal it. Just double click on that. You could also just move from the project panel or the Holomatrix panel over to the effect controls. And as you can see, here we've got a bunch of checkboxes. These are basically the boxes that determine what effects are turned on and off. So we've got our glows, and we've got our scan lines, our lines up and down, and our static. And I'd like to make a few changes to some of these things before we get into using the music to control them. So what if I were to go into my static settings here? Let's go down to my static settings. I'd like to make the static size, I don't know, maybe a little bit bigger, which you might not be able to see. And I'd certainly like to make its opacity stronger. So now we've got, maybe I'll bring the size back down a little bit. Let's leave back where it was. Okay, so we've got a lot of static there, and the opacity is much stronger, so we can see that. I'm also going to use something called a random, I'll also use a low resolution frame. So if I click on that, as you can see, the image loses resolution. Now, maybe you're not going to see this on TV, but you might see this digitally, and so that's really what I'm going for here. Okay, with that done, I think everything else is looking pretty good, pretty much the way I want it. So now I'm going to start using audio to drive when these effects are turned on. So I will choose Layer, New, and Solid, and I'll add in Black Solid. Doesn't really matter what it's for, but I'll call the layer Soundkeys, and I'm going to make it the same size as the composition only so that it's easier to work with, but it really doesn't matter too much. I'll click OK, and then I'll choose Effect, Trapcode Soundkeys, and I'll tell Soundkeys that it should use the audio layer called Gym Music. And what we'll do is we will adjust the spectrum just to. This is not a lot of stuff here, as you can see. It's not coming very high, so I'm going to adjust the spectrum, just scale it up a bunch, so I have a lot more area to work with like that. Okay, just so you can see how this works. Let me turn off my my background layer here, my Holomatrix layer, and let's do a quick RAM preview of just the spectrum so we can see exactly what's going on. Okay. Okay, it looks like I've got the spectrum scaled up way too much. Let's bring that back down. Let's bring it back down, take a look again. See, because they're all hitting the top here, and I'd really prefer it if it only reached the top when they were at the loudest that they get. So I can scale this back down a bunch. There we go. That's looking a little bit better. Let's do one more preview. And you know what? I'll bring it down even more. Why don't I set it down to 2? And let's take a look. Alright, that's doing a little bit better. It doesn't have to go all the way up to the top. I just want to be able to see where it's at and have a little more room to work with. Okay. And I'm especially interested in this one right here. This, that's it. That's my that's the band that I want. That's our snare drum. So what I'm going to do is just kind of get in over there and isolate this. And what I'll do is I'm going to set my range 1 values here. For starters, instead of average of range, let's tell it to use an on-off trigger. That means it hits this line and it's either on or it's off, right? So we're going to work here. And if you keep an eye on this output area right here, you'll see that every single time the band gets past this line, this output lights up. So let's take a look. Right, so you can see that. In fact, I'm going to bring this down just a bit, give it a little more there. One more time, let's take a quick look. So we get a few frames where this is lit up, and what we're going to do is we're going to use that snare drum to drive the turning on and off of the effects that we were looking at before. Okay, so let's do this. Let's again make sure that we have it set to on-off trigger. And because it's already linked to the audio, all I need to do is click on Apply. And if I hit U to reveal the keyframes, as you can see, we've generated a bunch of keyframes. Now, I've made a mistake here, actually, because you can see the outputs values range from 0 to 100. And I don't want that. I want them to range between 0 and 1 for on and off. So I'll set this to 0, 1, and again, I'll click Apply. And if we check now, we range between 0 and 1. Right? So when the audio reaches this line, it turns all the way up to 1, and when it's below that, it's down to 0. Maybe something in between as it's kind of going through that line. But there you go. And we can use the 1s and the 0s because when you're working with Holomatrix, these checkboxes are 0 for off and 1 for on. So let's link each of these boxes to these keyframes. I'll start with, why don't I start with the static, right? So I'll alt-click on the static, and I'll tell it to grab its values on and off from these keyframes, from output 1. And with that done, I'll choose Edit, Copy. I'm just going to copy this expression. And I'll start using this for the rest of them as well. For the interference ghost, I'll paste it in. Why don't I bring this up a little bit? And I'll go into the use color separation. Again, I'll drop it in. And I'll do it for use low resolution. So basically, every time we hit that snare drum, these properties are going to turn on. Now, I noticed that the TV wasn't really rolling a lot before when I was playing it back. It didn't really give me a good TV roll. And that's because my TV roll settings are not ideal for this kind of thing. Right now, my chance of TV roll is set to 25%, which means, 25% chance that the TV will roll. I'm going to set this up to 100. And that'll do it. And while I'm there, why don't I also get into use colorization, and I'll alt-click on that, and I'll also paste the expression in so that when it hits one of these frames, one of these keyframes of 1, it will change the color of the footage as well. Okay, let's get back in here and take a quick look. And well, there's one other thing for use colorization. Let me turn off my sound keys layer, turn back on the footage. It's a bit too blue. That's use colorization is coming on. As you can see, it's very distorted now. The footage is a mess, and which is exactly what I want. But I do want to set the color brightness settings here. I'll set the colorize to only 50%. So it retains some of its original color, and it only loses a little bit of it, and it becomes sort of more into the blues. All right, with this done, let's take a quick look and see what we've got with a RAM preview. Okay, looking pretty good, or bad rather. Every time there's a snare drum hit, we get some messed up video. Our TV roll, our static, our color separation. There you go, not too bad. Okay, now I know what you're thinking, which is probably that's not the most practical application of an effect that I've ever seen. Why would one use the snare drum to drive the effects turning on and off? And you probably won't, but it's likely that you will use some kind of audio that you can isolate to do that. But let's say you're not using audio like that. Maybe you've been given a separate track of static and you want to use that to drive the effect. So I've got some more audio here that was just hidden. It's our static audio right there. And if I hit LL to reveal the waveform, right now you're not going to see anything because I have the volume turned off. So let's turn the volume on. And as you can see, right here and here we've got some static. And why don't I just turn off the music here. In fact, why don't I just solo this layer so we can just hear the music, and we'll take a listen. Right? So you can hear that the static comes on at different times. All right, and so what we'll do is we'll just adjust sound keys to work with that. Let's make sound keys. Let's solo the sound keys layer. Make that visible and make it solo, and we'll tell it to use the static layer. And again, let's just find a spot, a nice loud spot there, and I'll scale up the audio. It doesn't even really matter. I really just want to have it as soon as we reach anything above 0. I want that effect to kick in. So what I'll do is I'll just bring this down, and something like that should be okay. And we'll just use it to grab the entire band of audio. And again, we'll use on-off trigger. And again, output min-maximum of 0 to 1. And let's click on apply. Right? And so now these keyframes have been reset. When we're not playing any audio here, we're going to see a value of 0. When we start hitting this area, we'll see a value of 1. So with that done, this should have completely changed the way this effect looks now, at least in terms of when it turns on. So let's check that out. Let's bring this back up, just minimize all that, and I'll turn off sound keys, the sound keys layer's visibility. And even when it's invisible, it still works. Okay, let's do a quick RAM preview. So as you can see now, every time we hit some static noise, we get bad reception. And in fact, I can select my static layer, and I can hit LL to reveal the audio waveform here. And let's do a preview again. So when it runs over this area, or this one, or even this one, we're going to get bad video. Not bad. Now just to point out, I really was not delicate when I did this last audio isolation operation, because there's audio here and then there's none here. It's very easy to do that, and you don't even need sound keys for that kind of operation. You could just select the audio and choose animation, keyframe assistant, convert audio to keyframes, and it will give you keyframes. You can't really control how those values are generated, but for something not delicate like this, you can get away with it. When you're starting to deal with more delicate areas, like trying to isolate a specific band of audio or a specific sound in the audio, you're going to have a lot more trouble doing that without a program, without a plugin like Soundkeys. So definitely worth checking out. It's a plugin I use a lot just because of the amount of delicate control you have over what it is you're doing. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this tip. You can learn more about driving your animation with audio in episodes 5 and 6 of Red Giant TV, which you can find at redgianttv.com. And of course, you can find Holomatrix and Soundkeys at redgiantsoftware.com. Once again, I'm Aharon Rabinowitz for Red Giant Software. See you next time.